We are going to go to the next level of reading guitar tabs. I'm going to show you the symbols that you need to know as a metal guitar player and even a rock guitar player. We're not going to cover the whole thing. We're not going to boil the ocean here. I'm going to show you exactly what you need to know and what's relevant to you. Now, at the end of our lesson here, I'm also going to explain why you should never rely solely on tabs and what to do instead. So hang around for that. Now, assuming you know the basics of reading tabs, and I'll go through those just real quick here. I do have a complete beginner's guide on reading tabs. I'll link to that in the description here. But you've got your 6 lines, which those are your 6 strings on guitar. You know that bottom line there, well, that's your heavy E string, your low E string, and so forth. Where you see the numbers on the lines, well, that's the fret that you're going to play on that string. So those are the basics. Now, what we're looking at here is just a PDF file. This is a tab sheet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch the views over to a software called Guitar Pro, because that's going to help us read these symbols, and I can show you what all these symbols for timing and all these little things that you can add to it and explain what all that is better in Guitar Pro. So in Guitar Pro, typically you'll see these 2 side panels, then you'll see your tablature in the middle there. Let me just briefly go over this. So the panel on the left side, this is the part that we're going to focus on over here. Okay, you see all these little symbols here. Now, we're not covering every one of these. I'm just going to show you what's relevant to metal guitar, okay? Just the stuff you really need to know. Now, on the right side over here, you've got some song information. You can see I've got Powerful Classic Metal Riff. I think this was a lesson we had back in October. And you've got some track information, all that. I'm not going to cover that in this video. I can do a separate video on that and tell you how to set that up. Just let me know if you want that later. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hide this section here so we can focus on the tabs and the symbols. Okay, so the first thing I want to cover here is what's called the tempo, the BPM. You can see up here, we are in standard tuning, by the way. I've got this 165 here. This is the tempo of the song. Now, this tab, again, this is a riff we already have. So let me just press the space bar, and I'm going to play this, just a little bit of it so you can hear what it sounds like in this tempo. Now again, BPM, you may not ever even worry about this so much, especially if you're learning a riff, somebody else's riff or whatever. You're going to hear the song, you're going to have the timing kind of like in your head. So you'll just look at the tabs and, okay, I play those notes, and you'll see symbols like PM, and we'll explain what that means in a second here and how all these things are tied together. But again, if you're writing your own riffs, you'll want to plug that BPM there. And what's cool about this is you can change it here. And you might say, hey, I like this a little bit slower, a little bit faster. Let me re-record that. You know, you might want to do that. So this is a cool tool to play around with. Let's move on, though, to the timing between notes. And this is a really important piece, and this is probably where I get the most questions. Like, what are these symbols below the notes here? On the left side panel over here, you see all these little signs. Now, we're not going through each and every one of these. I just want to show you what's relevant to you right now. So these start with your whole note right here, and you can see as I hover over this, it'll pop up and show me exactly what that is. So whole note, then we've got half note, then we've got quarter note, and you can see here we're on what's called an eighth note. That's the one highlighted. So by the way, anytime I highlight any of these notes, and these are just all eighth notes here, it's going to tell me what they are. This is going to be highlighted, right? So we've got a little offset over here with a 3 and 5 power chord. You can see that. Well, that is a quarter note, okay? So that determines the timing between these notes, the time that's going to go by after you play that note before you play the next note or before that part ends. Again, these are all eighth notes. Now you heard how that last part, that has some space between that, and that's the power chord. That's the C power chord, frets 3 and 5 on the A and D strings here. You can see there's a bit of space before we go to that next line here. There's more space between that, okay, and that next note, which is on the line below that. So again, this determines how much time there is in between those notes. Now, what I want to show you real quick is let's go to a blank tab sheet, and I can explain this a little bit deeper here. So we've got, let's just play a power chord. I'm just going to play, let's just do this here. Okay, I want that to hold out for this entire measure right here. These are all like little measures here, okay? I want this to hold out, so I'm going to press 0 there. Get some distortion on here. I can cover the sounds of Guitar Pro. I can tell you how to set this up. I'll do that in another video. I want to stay on point here. So by default, that just defaulted to, what is it here, a quarter note, right? Well, I want that to play out. So if I just let it play here, a quarter note, and our BPM, let's just make the BPM the same. Let's just make it at 165 like our other song was. I can play this out. So look at this again. Look how far the line goes, but listen to when this stops. That line kept going long after the note stopped. So I want to hover over both of these notes, and I'm going to go over here and change it to a whole note. A whole note is going to make it last that entire time. Again, it cuts off, of course, right here at this section here, because that's where we're starting a new measure. So, again. Okay, so if I wanted to carry those out, and let's just say we'll put another power chord here. Let's play a G power chord. And what's cool about this specific program, because I made this a whole note, or both these whole notes, it defaulted to this. I could change it if I wanted to, but now we have this. Okay, we've got whole notes. Now, what if I want to do something like this? What if I want to change this to something like, and I'm trying to do this in real time with you, so okay, I want less time between those. So what would I do? Well, let's take this out of here. Let's go to this line here. Well, it won't let me do anything because this whole note, these whole notes, they take up this entire spot here, right? So it won't let me do anything. So I want to change these to half. We'll go up here, change it to half. Now I can play it, but as you might guess, see it cut off before, okay, before it got to the end there. Let's play this one more time. All right, you also see these red lines here. What these red lines mean is, well, the system's telling me, you're wrong, Jason. It's basically telling me that this measure is not complete. I need something else here to complete that measure, okay? So, since we changed this to a half note, now I could change it to whole note again. I click out, there's no red lines because this whole note fulfills that measure. But again, let's change it back to half. Okay, so I would need to put something else here. So let's just put the G power chord right here. You can see it's half note. Both these are half notes. So now I don't have any red lines because half and half, well, that makes our whole measure. Does that make sense? Okay, and then we can just kind of continue on. Let's do, what were we playing there? 6 and 8. Let's do a B flat. Let's make this a whole note. Check this out. Now, real quick, I want to show you this because these are circled here, right? The power chord, this is an E power chord. They're circled, so they all kind of look the same. But this one here, this 6/8 power chord, you'll notice something different here. These other two have like this little line underneath, okay? Tiny little line there. You don't see one under 6 and 8. And this is how you can read these tabs, okay? So 6 and 8 is what? Let's look over to the left panel. That's a whole note. We made that a whole note. The half notes, well, there's a line that will be placed underneath. That tells us it's a half note. So that's another way to determine, right? Cool. So it carried out all the way. That last power chord we played carried out all the way through. Now, we can change all this. We can go back to the first power chord. Let's just change it to something else. Let's change it to an 8th note. Now if I click out of that, what do I have? I've got red lines. Why do I have red lines? Well, that's because now this doesn't fit anymore. So what that means is there's something else that has to go into this measure, okay, for it to be complete. So it's going to sound like this. So we have right here, these notes right here, we have eighth notes. So that's a lot less time between what I'm playing and the next set of notes that we're going to play, or the next note we're going to play, okay, which is that G power chord. Listen again. So that G power chord, because it's a half note, well, it's going to cut off because we moved it up. It's not in the middle anymore. We moved it up. So at this point, there's a few things that I can do. What if the song went like this? What if that was the song? Dun dun dun. What I would need to do is go here to the power chord that we're playing, and I would need to change the timing. Now here's where things get weird. The next length is what? Half note to whole note. Well, if I make this a whole note, well, that's not going to work because a whole note takes up the entire measure. So like, and this is where people get into the red, and this is where I used to get super frustrated at this program. I'm like, that's how the song goes, just make it fit. I'm going to show you a little trick, okay? So now we've got this. See that 3/5, because it's a whole note, it carried all the way into this next measure here. Now that sounds fine. Okay, you might say, well, that's how it's played, but on paper here, it doesn't work. So what I would do is I would go back and change this to half note. Now we know that doesn't fit either because it's a little bit longer than half note, right? But it's not quite a whole note. So there are these little dots, and thank you to my good friend Cliff, Riff with Cliff. He showed me this one day, and I'm like, really? That's all I have to do? So these little dots on the left side panel. So again, we went through all the notes, whole note, you know, half, quarter, eighth, whatever. You've got these tiny little dots down here. If I hover over this one dot, it says dotting. If I hover over the two dots, it says double dotting. What this does, it gives us a little bit more space without quite going to that next note. So we're at a half note here, right? So we know it's not a whole note because that doesn't fit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add one dot to this. So it's a half note with a dot. Now, does that work? I'm still in the red. So what can I do? Well, that didn't work. Let's try double dot. Double dot. We're no longer in the red. So when my friend showed me this, again, thank you, Riff with Cliff. When he showed me this, I was like, oh my God, that just made everything so simple. So this is basically how you get into writing these notes out. Okay, I just want to show you this on kind of a blank canvas here. So that's pretty much your timing. Now, let me show you one more thing in regards to timing. I want to go over back here, and just one quick little technique that we love is the gallop. This little technique right here when we do this. Okay, and you hear that in this riff. Listen to the very last part of this riff. Okay, we did this part right here. So I just want to show you this real quick. Okay, so look at these notes down here. We've got 1, 2, 3 together, and this is that very last part. I'm clicking stuff all over the place, sorry. Okay, these, if I click on this right here, that's where this part is. You see these 3 notes together, 3, and then we just do it again right here. If I click on this first 0, which is the open E string, we can see that that is what? You can see what's highlighted up here. That's a 16th note. The one after that, which is our upstroke, down, up, then down. Okay, so down, 16th, up. We can see that is also a 16th note. But that last one, that last part of that gallop, it changes. That note's actually an 8th note. So it's like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? So I just want to share that with you real quick. So if you're trying to tab out that gallop, well, that's it. It's often going to be 16th, 16th, followed by an 8th. So you'll hear it back to back. Okay, cool. One more time. So that's how you can tab the gallop. Are you still with me? Because now we're getting to the exciting stuff here. This is the cool part now. So let's scroll back up. We're going to talk about, see these little signs up here that say PM. I'm going to show you what that is. I'm going to bring up another tab sheet where you see all these little bends all over the place. Like, what is this, man? See this bend right here, this 9. Like, what is that? You're going to see some things like little lines between notes, like what you see right here. I'm going to show you what all of this means because all of this pertains to metal guitar. So let's go back to the rhythm section here. Again, this is the powerful classic metal riff. Right here, we've got these PMs above this note here, okay? And actually, you can see there's some dots that go to the next one. So that means these two notes have a PM. What does that stand for? It stands for palm mute. So you can see over here on the left, there's a PM. We hover over that. That's the palm mute on that beat. So that's how we make that muffled. Okay, that's how we make that a muted sound. So you see this 2 doesn't have that, so that's open. But listen to this. You can hear that palm mute in between there. Now, when you're looking at tabs, again, if you're hearing that song, you're going to hear the palm mute. So you're going to just naturally know to palm mute. But I have had people ask the question, well, first of all, how do I note that on here? Well, you can do that in Guitar Pro. You just hover over this note right here, and you just click on the PM. So, for example, if I wanted to make this first note a palm mute, I could do that. I just go over here and click on the palm mute. So now, you heard it mute. It's going to mute that first note as well. I could make all of these palm mute. I could just cover this whole thing here and just click on palm mute. Listen to it now. So let's go back. We don't want them all to be palm muted. So now we go back to the original where we've got some notes palm muted, that open E string in this case, while the notes played on the A string are not palm muted, giving us this sound here. Okay, so that's what that does. That's the palm mute. And you see we've got palm mutes all throughout here, especially this part. Now let's go back over to the blank tab sheet here. I want to show you one more thing. I'm going to delete what we were working on earlier. There's one more technique that I want to share with you here. So let's just do, let's make these, what do you want to make them? Let's make them 8th notes. I'm going to put a palm mute. Now what's cool is I can just copy this and then I can paste it here. Got 4 palm mutes. Okay, after the palm mute, I want to do something else. I want to do something like, alright, so we put the 4, the 4 palm mutes in there, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we've got a hammer-on pull-off on the A string between frets 5 and 7 there. So we'll go 5, 7, 5, and I think we're actually, pulling off again to the open A string. Put that in there. Okay, that's a little slow. These are a little bit faster here. 5, 7, 5, 0, right, on the A string. Well, they're all the same 8th note here. So I think what we have to do is change these to the next one up, the 16th notes. Now, I'm going to just highlight all of these notes here. We're going to change those to 16ths. And what does it sound like? Alright, so we got these 4 notes here, 5, 7, 5, we pull off to 0. So in this case, what I would probably do, just because I like to make things simple, I'll probably just highlight every one of these and I'll just put hammer-on pull-offs between all of that. And there you go. I mean, that's right there enough to know this is hammer-on pull-off. Okay? Now, I actually go to the open E string and palm mute one more time. So I think we probably need to add, you can see I'm in the red here, I think we probably need to add that here within that same measure. So does that work? And I probably need to make it the same timing that these notes are. Well, we'll leave it. Let's just see if that fits. No, it does not fit, but let's play it anyway. So I think I might need to extend that last note out just a little bit. And let me make a point real quick. We're not really trying to fit the song into the tabs. That's not what we're trying to do. If the song sounds like, well, this is the riff, this is how it goes, then we need to figure out how it's going to work here rather than changing the riff to make it work here. Does that make sense? So this note right here, we know we hit that palm muted open E string. So let's just extend that out a little more. Let's make that from 16th to 8th note. Does that work? No, it does not. Let's play it again. Okay, let's extend it out a little bit more. What if we went to, let's say, quarter note? Does that work? That works, okay? That's actually not what I played, though. Okay, actually we have a power chord in there after that palm muted note. So I'm actually going to change this back. I'm going to change it to a quarter note because I think it needs to be the same as these first few notes here. So let's change that to quarter note. Let's put a power chord in here. And again, this note here is palm muted, but the power chord is not. So, and that actually works right there. So listen. Okay, so we've got that. Now, if the riff repeats itself, what I would do in normal cases, I would just take this whole thing, copy, and we paste. So now we've got... Now that covers you for riffs and rhythms for the most part, but there are a few more symbols that I want to share with you that I think you're really going to enjoy these because this is where we get into the expressive playing and all the little nuances. So we're going to take a look at a couple of guitar solo tabs. What does all this mean? Well, let me just play this solo for you. This is this is part of the core melodic solos in the course in my academy called Melodic Solos. This is actually the first one you'll learn. Pretty simple for the most part. I'm just going to play this through and watch when we get to these pieces down here with the funny little arrow pointing up and the little line here. Okay, so you heard all of that. You heard when we got to the 16. Okay, and basically what that is... Okay, I'm just taking the G string 16th fret and I'm bending that. I'm giving that a half bend. Where you see that over here on the left panel, you can see the arrow. Okay, it's highlighted because we already have it listed. I could take that off and we could remove that bend. Okay, it's just a regular note. Okay, but if we want to make it a bend, we just click on this arrow right here and you can make it a bend. You can make it a full bend. I think in this case we just had half bend. Okay, that means we're just moving up a half note. That's all. So, and then we hit the 16th fret again. We come back down on that. And then we've got another technique between 14 and 12 here. You can see when I click on 14, what's highlighted here. It's that little 1 to 3, which means it's just a shift slide. It's just meaning we're playing one note, but then we're sliding to another note like this. Okay, that's all that means. It just means we're sliding to that note. Now, another thing you might have noticed here is, and this is kind of going back to the timing, these little dots, right? So you can see, I just want to go back to this very briefly here. 17th fret on the B string here, right? You can see that is what? It's a half note, but it's a little bit more than a half note. Then we go to the 16th fret of the G string. That's what? That's a quarter note. So this half note plus a little more plus a quarter note, well, that fulfills this measure here. Okay, so you see where I have these little dots in some of these areas. And that's because when you're playing lead, and this is where this really comes in, when you're playing guitar solos, rarely are you going to be playing like to the grid. Everything's matched up just perfectly. You know, playing guitar solos is more about expression. So the last thing you want is to try to play so that it matches perfectly. if that makes sense. So you're going to have all these little nuances. And a very important note I want to cover, no pun intended on the note, but a very important point that I'm going to cover in a second here when we get through this next part. So one more thing I want to show you real quick. I'm in another file. This is part of Melodic Soloist as well, but you'll see these little wavy lines here. It's like it's waving at you, right? And you see over here on the left panel, that's left hand vibrato. So this is where you can add vibrato here, right? So listen to how this sounds. Now, look at this little symbol here too. I'll explain that in a second here. Let me just click so you can hear what this wavy line sounds like. You hear those notes kind of wavy, and again, that's just the vibrato that you're adding to it. Now, why did when I click the space bar, when I started right here, it didn't start right away? Watch, look at the line. This goes back to the timing. I know we're kind of bouncing around a little bit here, but as I see these things, I want to explain them to you, because you might be thinking, well, Jason, I wrote this guitar solo, but it doesn't start right at the beginning of that measure. It actually hesitates a little bit before we get into that first note. Well, what did I do in this case? I added, you see this little symbol over here, this little squiggly line here. That's a rest. And I made that rest, well, what did I make it? You can see what's highlighted here, right? I made that rest a half note. That means nothing is played for the first half of that measure. Then I came in, and you can imagine what the 18th fret on the B string is here. I'm bending a full note, right? You can see the bend, but what's the timing of that note? Since this is a half note, this rest, and there's only one more note here, well, that's got to be a half note too, right? Otherwise, I'd have like red bars all over the place here. And again, that's a full bend there that we're doing. So we go to the 17th fret here, and that's where we just give it some vibrato. Same on the 19th fret though, okay? So pretty cool. Now, another thing I want to show you real quick is you've got these little, like, I don't know, what are these, like boomerangs? Look at the 17th fret here, and then the 19th fret. Look at those. What are these little black lines here? So if I click on one of these, you can see what's highlighted over here. Well, let's hover over that. That's a left hand tap. So this is kind of where we get into like the legato picking. That means when I played that note, I didn't pick that note. I just landed on it and just kind of just let that resonate as I landed on it, right? So that's what that means. Now, speaking of that, that's kind of like a hammer-on, like the note that you don't pick. You'll see down here, and let me just play this little thing for you. Let's play it one more time. All right, and this thing is a little jumpy because it's trying to go down to the next part here. But you see 17, we're on the B string here, 17, 18, 17. You'll see this line across in an HP. Well, what does that mean? You can see over here in the left panel, that's a hammer-on and pull-off. So you can see I didn't pick any of those notes except for the very first one, and that translates over here. Well, the first and the last one, right? That translates over here, this hammer-on pull-off between 17, 18. Then we went over, that's on the B string, we go to the G string, and I just hammer down on these notes, right? So this is kind of hammer-on pull-off / legato picking here. One more thing I want to show you in regards to our techniques here. This little part right here. You see all these lines in between the notes, and you see this TP, and no, that's not the TP you're thinking about, but let me just play this and I'll explain how we do this. Okay, obviously that sounds like some finger tapping, right? So you can see how we write this out. If I click on 9 and if I click on 7 and 5, you can see we've got the hammer-on pull-off and the tap as well in here. So that's just basically the tapping part. So all tapping is really a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs. If you think about it, you're tapping one note, right? With that, you know, with your picking hand finger, or your picking finger, however you want to say that, and then that's basically just a hammer-on. You're hammering down on that note with that finger, and then the next note you're pulling off with your fretboard hand, your fretboard fingers. And then you're pulling off on a series of notes there only to hammer back down on some of those notes, right? So they're essentially just hammer-ons and pull-offs. But that's what that means. Whenever you see this line and you see the TPs, again, not the other TP, but this is just finger tapping. It's the tapping, and there's like a pull-off here as well. So that's the kind of mixed bag there. Now, I actually include tabs and the guitar profiles to all of my monthly lessons and all of my courses. So if you'd like to learn more about that, learn some new riffs, and of course read some tabs, check out the Jason Stallworth Guitar Academy. I've got a link for that in the description of this video. But here's the important thing that I want you to understand, and here's what I said in the beginning. Do not solely rely on reading tabs. And there are two reasons for this. Number one is the tabs, they're often going to be little nuances and they're going to be incorrect in certain areas. Be okay with that. Learn to accept that. Remember, things like guitar solos, they are so nuanced, and you're not writing music to lock it to the grid or fit it into the tab sheet, right? So sometimes you're going to have these things that they just don't quite fit perfectly in the tablature, you know, and if maybe it's somebody that was writing the tabs made a mistake, or just it's just too nuanced. Just be okay with that. And the second reason, which we lead right into that, if you rely solely on tabs, you are killing your development of ear training, of being able to listen to something and figure it out. In fact, I would like for you to figure things out, or do your best to figure things out before you even look at the tabs. Or if you need to look at it right away just to see how it starts, but then put the tabs away and see if you can figure the other stuff out without the tabs. Tabs are to be used as just a reference point. You never want to get to where, well, I've got to see every little note and every little thing going on in order to play it. No, you do not. Develop your ear training and use that skill that you build with being able to read tabs. Use those together as a powerhouse. Again, I hope this video helps you. If you had questions about some of the stuff, some of the symbols in there, I hope those answered your questions and hope it made your life easier. Again, I know there are a ton of other symbols within here, and my intent was not to deep dive into all these. I don't use all these symbols, to be honest with you. I use the stuff that I need for my own music and for my lessons and such, and that's what I wanted to share with you today, because as a metal guitar player and even a rock guitar player, I think what we covered today should help you build a really solid foundation on reading tabs and writing your own tabs. So again, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, until next time, keep it metal, read some tabs. Actually, work on your ear training. Do that above tabs, but build both skills. Keep it metal and keep playing music.